welcome to Channel 44. I'm Mercy Gashegu Sembatia, together with
Noah Isabel Clinton to bring to you our local news bulletin this afternoon. To begin with, 14 public servants have been fined for failing to declare their wealth. 14 government officials, including 5 Ugandan Revenue Authority staff, have been convicted and fined over failure to declare their wealth. This was revealed by the Inspectorate of Government Director in charge of Leadership Code, Joram Magezi, at the Ugandan Median Center in Kampala yesterday. Since 2021, 31 cases have been filed at the tribunal. 14 cases of these have been convicted for breaching the Leadership Code Act, and the rest of the people were still being probed. The convicted include Chebat Kelthumi, Claire Nyakana, Edward Kame, Louis Subi Nazir, and Rita Kasambiti, all attached to the Uganda Revenue Authority. The others are lecturer Bulaim Mayanja at the LDC, Mulago National Referral Hospital Senior Engineer Edward Kataha, and Mulago Kashia Bone Makunza. Others are the National Council for Science and Technology Board member Alphonse Kandia, the Uganda National Culture Center Board member Fred Mutebi, the Principal Immigration Officer Martin Watega, Principal Agriculture Officer attached to Bushenyi Amon Natwebembera, and Uganda Bureau of Statistics staff Ruth Chomuhendo. All these have been convicted for failure to register their wealth with the office of the IGG. In the other stories, Mao applauds Mr. Museveni for keeping opposition secrets. While addressing the media yesterday at Democratic Party headquarters, Honorable Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs Norbert Mao saluted the President for the gentleman he is. He said President Museveni has kept a lot of dirt about some opposition leaders. Norbert Mao told the press that President Museveni has hosted and interacted with many opposition figures at State House, but he has never spoken about them. Mao's monologue stemmed from the allegations that some leaders in opposition leading party, the National Unity Platform, had secret talks with the government before the release of the 2 legislators, Mohamed Sejlinya and Alan Sewanyana, on bail, which last week NUP President Mr. Robert Kyagulanyi distanced himself from reported negotiators, saying he was not aware of it. Mao to Kyagulanyi in the address pronounced that anyone who denounces dialogue should stop calling themselves a leader. Meanwhile, Norbert Mao confirmed having worked behind the scenes to ensure the release of MPs Sejlinya and Sewanyana, saying he did it for their parents, who he said had requested him over the time. Mao also vowed in his monologue to expose political extremists who he said have made Uganda's politics a toxic. Outside the Pearl of Africa by Mercy Gashegu.
Thank you so much, Bill. Now, outside Uganda, in South Sudan, President Salva Kiir and his deputy Riek Machar have agreed to scrap controversial laws that allows the National Security Services to arrest people without an arrest warrant. This is a significant part of reforms agreed in a peace agreement to end a brutal 6-year civil war. Rights groups have described the NSS as a feared agency used to silence dissent and which has been accused of widespread human rights abuses. The peace deal was signed by Mr. Kiir and Mr. Machar in September 2018, but it took another 17 months for the two to agree to form a unity government. Now the pair say 3-year transitional period has been completed and they are moving into a phase that will see elections in December next year and a formal transition of power by February 2025. More than 400,000 people are thought to have died as a result of the conflict and violence that continues in parts of the country. At least one person has died after a tropical cyclone. More than one person have died actually after a tropical cyclone battered Madagascar's east coast with heavy rain and powerful winds tearing roofs off houses and triggering a storm surge. Cyclone Freddy made a landfall on Tuesday weeks after another tropical storm killed 33 and left thousands without shelter. Schools have been shut and traffic has been suspended. Earlier, Freddy caused some damage in Mauritius, flooding beachside hotels. The Indian Ocean island nation is particularly vulnerable to cyclones. It is hit by an average of 1.5 cyclones every year, the highest rate in Africa, according to the United Nations Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. In Europe, Vladimir Putin has sharpened his vitriol towards the West as President Joe Biden, fresh from a visit to Kyiv, praised Western democracy for standing up to naked Russian aggression. In a week heavy with events ahead of Friday's anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Mr. Putin spoke first. The West had enabled Nazi Germany, he claimed, and had turned Ukraine into a neo-Nazi regime that was anti-Russia. Hours later, Mr. Biden said autocrats understood only one word: no, no, no. According to Biden, Mr. Putin thought the world would roll over, and he added that he was wrong, vowing that NATO was more united than ever. Kyiv stood strong, proud, tall, and free, and Western support for Ukraine would not fail, according to Mr. Biden. U.S. authorities have said a Norfolk Southern, whose toxin-laden train derailed in Ohio town, must pay for the cleanup or face tough penalties. The train, which derailed in East Palestine on the 3rd of February, was carrying vinyl chloride and other potentially hazardous substances. Norfolk is now facing multiple lawsuits filed on behalf of residents, many of whom were forced to evacuate their homes. It has apologized for the incident. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, which has the power to fine or sanction firms over environmental concerns, said Norfolk Southern would pay for cleaning up the mess they created and for the trauma they have inflicted on the community. The former face of Mexico's war on drugs has been convicted by a U.S. jury of drug trafficking. Genaro Garcia Luna, once Mexico's security minister, was found guilty of taking millions of dollars from Mexico's biggest crime group, the Sinaloa drug cartel. Garcia Luna, who was arrested in the state of Texas in 2019, had pleaded not guilty. The 54-year-old could face life in prison. At a minimum, Garcia Luna will serve the mandatory minimum of 20 years, according to a statement from the Department of Justice. And still in our international news, the pilot of a British fighter jet which crashed off a Royal Navy aircraft carrier has spoken of his relief at managing to eject from the £100 million F-37. Speaking shortly after the incident in November 2021, the pilot, known as Hux, said he only had seconds to react. An official investigation concluded the sudden loss of power on takeoff was probably the cause of a cover being left on one of the aircraft's jet intakes. The documentary also reveals how the Royal Navy's HMS Queen Elizabeth ship was harassed by Russian aircraft and how it played a risky game of hide-and-seek with the Chinese Navy. The number of people killed in landslides which hit coastal towns in Brazil, Sao Paulo state over the weekend has risen to 44. More than 40 others are still missing. Locals have joined forces with rescue workers to search the muds for survivors. More than 750 people lost their homes as torrents of earth and rock came loose from hillsides after a record amount of rain fell in the coastal area of east of Sao Paulo. Meteorologists said more than 680 millimeters of rain came down in the municipality of Betioga in the space of only 24 hours. And U.S. President Joe Biden administration has unveiled a plan that would make it harder for the migrants to claim asylum once COVID border controls lift in May. It would require adult asylum seekers to use an app to book a meeting with U.S. officials or first claim asylum in another country before reaching the United States. Failure to comply would make migrants ineligible if they subsequently reach their border. Pro-migrant groups likened the plan to Trump-era policies. Yesterday's proposed measure is the toughest to curtail immigration yet introduced to Mr. Biden, a Democrat who came into office promising a more human approach to the border crisis than the administration of his predecessor, Donald Trump. And still in the United States, victims of the 9/11 attacks are not entitled to seize $3.5 billion in assets belonging to Afghanistan's central bank, according to a ruling from a U.S. judge. Lawyers pursuing the compensation argued these funds could satisfy court judgments they had obtained against Afghanistan's ruling Taliban. At the time of the attacks in 2001, the Taliban had allowed Al-Qaeda militants to operate from Afghanistan. The suicide plane attacks on America claimed 2,977 lives. Judge George Daniels said he was constitutionally restrained from approving access to the funds, which are frozen in the United States, as this would amount to a ruling that the Taliban were Afghanistan's legitimate government. Well, that brings us to the end of this afternoon's News in Brief. Thank you for watching Channel 44.
Mercy, the new Public Health Amendment Act, where it has constituted the penalties of some individuals who willingly go to spread some diseases. It has come up with the fines. You shall face a fine of 3 million or 1 year in jail. And then to you expecting mothers or the people who have children and they haven't gone for vaccination, still there is a fine
of 1 million
of
shillings.
1 million and then a number of months in jail still. So
that's what is happening in Uganda right now. Thank you for watching Channel 44. We'll be back at 4 p.m. with business news. Stay tuned to Channel 44. Pastor Jessica Kayanja is coming up next with the lunch hour program. Do not miss.